And this new poll tells us what I think we kind of already knew, that Joe Biden is really not all that, right? Like it's like Joe Biden is not what the country wants right now, not even the Democrats. I mean, we learned that the other day, 51% of Democrats in another poll said they didn't want him to run again. ABC News did this great story where they went out and they talked to all these people and kids on college campuses. And they're like, okay, so Biden, he's your guy. Like, why? And nobody could say why. Nobody could say why. And there'd be like this awful pause. And then someone would say, well, because he's not Trump. I'll tell you, you need more than that. You really do. I know negativity plays a role in politics and all that, but you need more than just not being Trump to win this thing, because there's so much other baggage. I mean, maybe it got you through before. It's not going to get you through right now because we got an economy that's a mess, major inflation that's still coming. I mean, the Fed can't really do anything about it. We're facing a default. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And consequently, I don't know how he's going to pull this off. I mean, you get a border mess going on that's about to get worse in a whole couple of days. You got the Ukraine-Russia situation. You got Taiwan going on. I mean, it is doomsday. And so this doesn't surprise me at all. What you see in this ABC News Washington Post poll is that Biden has reached the lowest level of his entire career in his approval ratings. I think that this is indeed a problem for the Democrats overall. Definitely a problem overall because they don't have a lot of sort of wind at their back with Joe Biden right now. Over and over and over again, what you hear them cite, including in this poll, is that they're worried about his mental acuteness because, you know, there's 80 and then there's Joe Biden 80.
That's a mighty full sack you're carrying.
Piss off, you perverted old freak.
Ooh, we got a fighter.
I'm not an ageist, but I'm also a realist. And there's plenty of people, right? They're 80 years old and they're doing okay. But, you know, they probably aren't doing quite as okay as maybe they were doing at 60 or 65, or, right? Right? Like, I mean, like, let's just be honest. Let's be realists. And in Biden's particular case, he's an old 80, a very old 80. He needs his wife to escort him off the stage. He doesn't know where the microphone is. He doesn't know where to look. He doesn't know who anyone is. It's like he doesn't know what day it is. He's never been, let's be honest, especially spry or especially nimble with his words. I do not believe he's that smart. I think he's a great sort of political animal. People that know him have told me he's extremely shrewd in that way. And he's kind of mean and he doesn't forget those kinds of things. But, you know, could he remember what GDP is? Could he remember who the president of a certain, you know, country is? I don't think so. I think that has really, really failed. And that is what people are citing over and over again. So I sat down the other day with the esteemed law professor, constitutional scholar, great criminal attorney, that would be Alan Dershowitz, and he was at Harvard. I think he may still be at Harvard, still teaching, but, you know, his whole career at Harvard. He's come under fire because he has defended former President Trump.
How dare you?
And said, look, like his new book is Get Trump. Like they're just going after him because they want to get Trump. Like there's a whole vendetta, and that's just wrong. It's wrong for our country. And what struck me was in our interview, he said to me, Trish, I've been a Democrat my whole life. Like, that's how I identify. And I was like, wait, so are you going to vote for, he said he voted for Biden before. And I said, are you going to vote for him again? Keep in mind, Alan Dershowitz, he's been right out front and center. The reason we were talking was because we were going through all these. You can watch the whole interview, by the way, if you want, because I think if we haven't put it up, we're going to. I believe it's up on YouTube, actually. You can see the whole thing. But he said all these cases against Trump, and they're very deliberate, they're very targeted, and his constitutional rights as an American have been violated. And yet, when I asked him, will you vote for Biden again? I want you to hear what he had to say.
I have a problem voting for the ticket of Biden and Kamala Harris because of Biden's age. And I, at this point, don't think Kamala Harris would necessarily make the best possible president, but I'm going to hold my views in abeyance to see who the candidates are on the other side. I don't decide who I vote for until really the day of election. I don't believe in early voting, by the way. I think all voting should be done on the same day on election day, except for soldiers and people who can't possibly come to the polls. because, the election isn't over until the election is over. And I don't like people voting early before the debates or before people should have made up their mind.
Alan was getting into some other issues there about, the whole early voting thing. I also think that, look, if the Democrats are going to play that game, then conservatives need to play it too, and they need to be organized on that front. But what I just was amazed by was he was sort of saying like he didn't think that he had the mental acuteness, and he was certainly convinced that Kamala Harris doesn't have the mental capability. I mean, she doesn't. I'm sorry. Like, you know what? I go back to her New Hampshire polling. When she first came out the door, I was like, oh, okay. I actually was like, she could be interesting. She might be a potential contender for them. And then I heard the way she conducted herself during the Supreme Court, the nominees, the hearings that they had for the justices. And she was pretty awful and pretty brutal, and her logic wasn't there. And now we see her, we saw her on the campaign trail. She was terrible. She was also the candidate that just went straight after Joe Biden on that debate stage. I mean, I'm sort of shocked. That's politics for you, that he was okay with her being his running mate after she suggested, look, you're basically a racist because you supported all of these efforts to keep schools segregated. And it was just a really ugly display. And that didn't really help her in the party. I guess she thought that she was going to pocket some votes on that. But I think people were really kind of taken back, and it didn't play well. And yet he went with her anyway. Like, her polling numbers in New Hampshire, oh my gosh, like anyone could poll better than her in New Hampshire. That's my home state. I was born and raised in the state of New Hampshire. And so I was watching those polls carefully, and she was just nowhere. So Joe Biden, he doesn't have the gravitas and the spryness and the mental fluency to really be able to take this, in my estimation, all the way through. And as a result, you'd be most likely looking at a vice president becoming president, should he ever step down. And I don't think the country's okay with that. I don't think they're okay with her. I do think if the Democrats were smart,
which they're not,
they'd primary him, meaning they would put up anyone. I don't think they have anyone. I mean, I don't think Gavin Newsom, who has basically caused everybody to move out of California. I mean, he looks younger. I guess that he's got that going on, but they don't really have anyone. Pete Buttigieg, forget it. I mean, don't forget all the infrastructure, massive challenges and problems we have had here in this country. So he doesn't really have much of a track record to run on. I think they're in trouble, and they're in trouble because they have, so to speak, sort of literally eaten their young. They have no one young. It's just Joe. Maybe Hillary. Could Hillary come back? No. For another round. Wow, that would be something. Back to some of the problems with Joe Biden. I mean, the economic stuff is obvious. The international stuff is obvious. I think his Secretary of State is doing a terrible job. Allegedly, it was Secretary Blinken, our Secretary of State now under Joe Biden, that orchestrated that letter. Don't forget that letter, right? From Mike Morell and 50 other ex-spies, political hacks that were trying to say that the Hunter laptop was nothing but a bunch of disinformation, when in fact it was true. And the stuff that they told us before was definitely fact, and they had it on good authority that Trump was compromised by the Russians, et cetera. Well, that was the stuff that was the misinformation, disinformation, if you would. So we've got a team in place that is not ready for prime time, as they say. This is the B team. Biden and Blinken, good old B team.